Ever feel like you're juggling way too much all at once and wondering if there is a way to make life a little softer and a little more balanced? Aren't we all? Today, we're exploring what it means to live the soft life as we manage the beautiful and sometimes chaotic demands of motherhood, entrepreneurship, and just everyday life. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Emily. I'm a certified Christian life and business coach. And if you have not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you do not miss a single episode. And if you're really feeling lovely, share this. I would love to get to connect with you more and those who you love too. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Not so long ago, I was pulled in a million directions. I felt like pretty much just like the normal average millennial mom parent out there. There is so much to keep up with, so much to keep track of, and so many opportunities and ways in which to manage it. Except that in this world of instant gratification, it's very easy to want to say yes to everything, have this difficulty in saying no to things, and really understanding what to prioritize in order to build out the life that you've actually wanted your whole life and have dreamed of and truly do value, and figuring that out. So I've been hearing this trendy term, the soft life, so many times, especially on YouTube and even among the younger generation, because I think so much of us were pushed into circumstances where we had to go and work hard, and school became like a actual full-on job if you were trying to make it far. And we're all sold to and bought the idea that we had to continue our education. So a lot of people went into the workforce already very burnt out and tired, because school and college is challenging, especially when you're having to go over and beyond getting credits for things that aren't even applicable to the everyday job that you're hoping to land when you're done. So you are so overschooled and have worked so hard to get to the point because there's so much competition in that arena. I think lately, though, the tides have turned a bit on that, and really stepping into who God made you to be has become a calling card for so many. And it's not so much like trying to figure out a way to make fast or easy money or to have an easy life, but rather a life that you actually do want to live in and not be bought and sold a dream that isn't your own. So a lot of us grew up in this time where our parents pushed us and academics pushed us to continue our education. And not to say that's all bad, and not to say that further education or higher education isn't necessary for some industries and certain jobs that you want to hold. But if you're not passionate about it, the amount of schooling that most people undertake with student loan debt, time, energy, all of it, it really ends up setting you back once you get out into the world, because you're trying to recoup all that time that you've spent just learning and figuring out how to apply it well enough to your life to make something of it and make it for a purpose. A lot of people, and I used to know the percentage, but most people are not even working in the capacity of which they got their degree in. There's just this hard line of trying to figure out, where's my place in all of this? What does God actually want me to do? And how do I balance it all against the expectations of others, against comparing yourself to others? It's only natural in this world that we live in on social media that it's easy to compare where you're at, the timeline that you're living in, the stage of life that you're in, to other people in similar boats as you. And it's hard because not all of us want the same things. Not all of us value the same things. Not all of us are passionate about the same things. Our uniqueness makes us whole, and that makes our whole society way more diversified and interesting. And I think we've lost a lot of that. There's been a lot of just everyone doing the same thing or having the same expectations about what they want to do rather than really embracing who God made you to be. And so I want to talk about this because a lot of us are pushing up against and pushing against the expectations of society versus settling into who God made you to be and in the season that you're in this life. Because every different part of your life is going to bring up so many different circumstances and different ways to not only interact with your situation, but grow closer to God. And there's a purpose in every season that we're in. And I have really wrestled with this as a millennial mom in my mid 30s now. I've had to figure out, who am I? Who did God create me to be? And even when I first got out of college and finished all my degrees, I really had to do a lot of soul searching. I speak to that in other episodes, but I really just want to touch on, how can you really live fully and with joy in the life that you have? And what does that look like? And what does this soft life trend mean? And how do we apply it to our lives? Or how do we take from it what people are hoping to get out of that? Like when they talk about the soft life, and what truly is the root of that? So, what is a soft life in culture? Soft life isn't about avoiding hard work or responsibilities. It's really about creating space for grace and focusing on what truly matters to you. It goes back to that value conversation. So, what you value and who God made you to be and what you're passionate about is different than me. So, if I'm driven to be a neurosurgeon and perform brain surgeries on people to give them a quality of life that they wouldn't otherwise have, that is going to set me up for a journey in life that is going to look a lot different than someone who would like to paint and express God's creation and what He laid on their heart of what they're walking through in life, to paint that on canvases and have an art gallery, for instance. Like, these two people are working in the capacity that God gave them a passion for, to impact not only their life with Him, but also the community that they're in, but in two very diametrically different ways. And so if I was the artist, I would feel like, okay, how do I go to school for 12 years so that people take me seriously? Or how do I make sure that I've got this and this established so that people look at me as successfully as they would a neurosurgeon? Because there's all these stigmas and expectations of what people should do, should have, where they should be. And it's all tied to this time frame of seasons of life and what that should look like. And I just can only speak from my own experience, but it's like when my generation first got out of college, it was very much like dog eat dog. You were competing for every job that was out there, and timing was hard then to find a good job. And then up against that, you're like comparing yourself to all your friends and their situation. And when did they start having kids? When did they buy a house? When did they get a new car? When did they have this or that or whatever? And so it makes you feel like either you're ahead and you're feeling like you got it going on, or you feel inferior, like you don't have enough, or you resent the situation that you're in. And so you can see that play out in many different people's expectations of being depressed about their life or being content in where they're at. But what I want to help us recognize is like we can take ourselves out of those circumstances and not be tied to the external things of our life that truly aren't making us joyful, and really pinpoint what it is that God has placed on our heart to value the most and live through that. And yeah, my life may look different than this person's, but it doesn't mean it's not as joyful, it's not as happy, it's not as flourishing as theirs, or that I haven't risen to a level that they have exceeded me in. And I think that's where people are really coming to terms with this soft life, or wanting to find the soft life, because we've all been pushed past our limit. We've all been pushed outside of who God innately made us to be and made us to care about, because I value things differently than you do, and you would value things differently than I do. So if I'm trying to fit my life into your scenario or vice versa, I'm not going to have that contentment. I'm always going to feel like I'm a fish out of water. And I think people describing the soft life is really them describing what they value and living that out without this weight of societal pressure or expectations, and just being able to be confident in who God made you to be, and confident in the situation that He has you in, knowing that ultimately our purpose is a lot different than the world wants us to believe. God doesn't call us to be burnt out. There are going to be seasons that are hard and challenging that we will need Him to carry us through. That will happen. But He called us to live purposefully and with joy, not just doom and gloom and anxious and worried and fretting and chaotic. That's not the world that's not the way He wants us to operate our lives in. So let's dive into how we can cultivate this soft life, and so that it feels softer, it feels actually more enjoyable, and that it has meaning behind it. One of the most like one of the struggles I dealt with the most in my like early life crisis was that I just felt like my life was purposeless. I felt like I wasn't doing anything to be purposeful because what I was working in this corporate life was going against the grain of who God created me to be and the capacity that I felt called to work in. It wasn't a match. And so it drew a lot of discontentment in my life and made it very hard for me to get up each day and feel like today is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I didn't feel that way. I felt like I was being punished. And God doesn't want us to operate in that mindset 24/7. A typical day in the life now is like someone who has to, especially a mom. So that's my experience. That's what I speak to. I wake up and the first thing I think about is, okay, am I going to do my workout or not? And typically I do because that's been a habit I've established for well over 20 years. I work out first thing in the morning. So I focus on that. And then it's all about the kids for the next 2.5, 3 hours of getting their stuff ready for school, getting them up, taking care of them, feeding them, dressing them, getting them off to school, getting back home. That is a focus. And then I have to switch gears and I have to be in work mode. I have to switch gears again and I have to get things done that I need to just to make our life go around, order groceries, take errands, schedule things, whatever that might be. I have to switch gears again, go get the kids. I have to be in mom mode, and then I have to be in life partner mode and help my husband when he gets home, and us figuring out school and finishing homework and getting dinner made. And then it's just like your life just is an amalgamation of switching hats all day long. And so it's hard to feel like you have to do it all and then add on to that the expectations of like church obligations and sports obligations and balancing that, and what is the value of our family, what do we want to say yes to, no to, all these things. And a lot of times we just feel the weight of expectations on us and to our loved ones, and putting them in the mix of all of our stuff too. You might be feeling like every decision, you might just be in a season where every decision feels like a tug of war between your responsibilities, your dreams, and your calling as a mom and a wife. The soft life that we're talking about is showing us how it's possible to prioritize both our family and purpose without the constant hustle and burnout place that our heart like ends up falling into and our mind keeps us in. So what is a first way that we can really develop this soft life, this life that feels enjoyable and more balanced? One would be to set clear boundaries and to protect your priorities. I used to think that saying no meant I was letting people down or that I wasn't capable, and that's a perfectionism issue for me. I never want people to feel like I can't do something. I never want to feel like I'm the dumbest in the room or inferior in any way. I always want to feel like I can do it all. And I struggle with that by if I say no, then that shows a weakness or a vulnerability. And I'm a very private person. So I don't even want people to like try to pick up on something I'm walking through. It's a problem. But I'm working on it and I've made a lot of progress. But I found that what actually helps my relationship, what helps me feel better, what helps me feel more connected to who God created me to be and the season He has me in, is being able to say no comfortably, because I know that my yeses are more meaningful. And when I do say yes, it is out of a mindset of serving, of love, of need. And I'm not saying yes to things because I feel like I have to mask a weakness of mine. And that's a different perspective switch. That changes things. So I used to have a lot of guilt over like not doing enough for the kids and at church and stuff. But I just realized like I was in a different season than some of the other moms. Like when I first had children, my husband was still traveling all week long. So on the weekends, being like having to go and serve more at church than the time that we would typically be there, it wasn't practical because I was burnt out from the week of being a single mom. I wanted to have more time with my husband when he was at home, as he did with the kids. And so we had to go through a very challenging season of saying no to a lot of stuff and going to a lot of places because we had to protect the time that we had together. And that was important for the health of our family. And it gave me a lot of peace because I knew that I wasn't saying yes out of fear that people would think bad of me. I was saying no out of a confidence and a strength that God was giving me to take care of what He had given me to steward in that season. And I had to prioritize my marriage and my kids and my mental health in that season. So that's just an example, but you can think about designating times of only family time, only work time, really harnessing the help of a non-negotiable routine and what that looks like. There's a myriad of books on habit stacking and creating like the best morning routine and all that. And you can get very nuanced with your schedule and have it planned out in the 30-minute increments. I'm not that way. I'm more of a flow person. So it's like in the morning, I'm doing working out, getting ready for the day. In the mid morning, I'm sitting down, I'm doing a chunk of work. At lunchtime, I'm spending time with the kids and with my toddler who's not in school full time still right now. And, just being very intentional with him and getting him down for his nap. And then I flow into getting some more work done, then picking up the kids and this family time. So I have a flow to my day, but some people, they like a regimented task list and they like to figure out that. But all of this is to say is having healthy boundaries is paramount, and having a soft life and having a life that's enjoyable and a life that's balanced and focused on the season that you're in and stewarding it well through the lens that God has placed on your eyes to see your world and how you're making an impact and what ultimately your purpose is. In Proverbs 31:27, it says, "She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness." Setting boundaries isn't, oh, I'm going to set aside an hour every day to binge watch TV and just be idle and be lazy or not schedule anything. But there is a time to say no to things that are filling you up in a way that your values and needs are being met for that, like saying no to things, like scheduling time for rest and recovery, for making sure that you're not overscheduling yourself because you have this ideal that you must get everything done by a certain timeline or whatever that pressure might be. So it's really just having an understanding of what are the productive hours of my day? What will they be used for? And am I setting my day up to be joy giving or depleting? And really, you have a lot more control over that than most people want to take ownership of, because it's easier to just pass the blame and pass the buck on your life being challenging when really we all have a lot more control over our circumstances than we want to admit, because then that would mean that we have to take ownership for the chaos that we might be living in right now. But there is a better way and there's a easier way to manage that. So getting on to tip number 2, it would be to embrace delegation and let go of perfectionism. I spoke to that a minute ago about struggling with perfectionism. It's like this urge to do it all, to be it all, to have it all, and how we need to be able to let go of some of these responsibilities to help us find more balance. So as moms, we often believe that we have to be superwoman, we have to wear all the hats, we have to do all the things, we have to be the one that carries the load, that is the glue and all of that stuff. And not to say that we aren't, but God did not design us to carry every single burden. He did not design us to be the one making all the decisions and struggling with decision fatigue. That's real. A lot of women get very frustrated with their husbands, not because of any particular reason, but just because they're tired of making decisions. Like they just want someone else to be like, we're going to do this. And you can just be like, got it. And so there's this tug and war in that respect of like, choices and making choices. And in our day and time, the amount of choices that we make is 10 times, 100 times, probably 1,000 times greater than our ancestors. There is a statistic that came out and it was like the amount of information that we get and are inundated with in one day is equivalent to what our ancestors acquired in their entire lifetime. So our brain is constantly filtering information, constantly having to make choices, constantly having to give attention to this or that. And so it helps to have things that are delegated, that are not part of your purview anymore. You don't have to be wondering about them. And one of the simplest ways I can give an example of this is my husband and I, we were always trying to figure out what's for dinner. And finally, it was just like, okay, how about Monday through Wednesday, dinner is on you, Thursday through Saturday is on me, Sunday we eat out. So that took the decision off of one person or both of us having to carry that weight and figuring it out all day long, or waiting until we got home and not having anything to make or cook or eat. And it's just delegating and making there a separation of responsibilities so that you can manage that. And that applies to your business, that applies to your work. A lot of times people will just avoid even communicating or delegating to colleagues because they just don't want to deal with the communication of it. And so you just pass that off on to doing it yourself. And you end up causing a lot more havoc for yourself. So delegation is key in all respects of your life, not just work. We often think that delegation is just like a boss's job, but we all can delegate things. And you can delegate things for your kids to do that take that mental load off of you, whether it's picking up the dishes at night and putting them in the sink, whatever it might be. But there's ways to delegate and to let go of perfectionism in order to have this more symbiotic relationship with all the things that you've got to get done for the day, the people in your life that are constantly surrounding you and needing you, and making sure that there is a more masterful way of getting through all the tasks that have to be done, all the choices that have to be made each and every single day. So the third tip would be to schedule intentional moments for rest and reflection. So this goes back a little bit to the boundaries conversation. There was a season in my life that I just decided to let go of the podcast. I let go of the podcast for like over 18 months because I just needed to. And I needed to be able to have the margin. So all of us know what a few tasks or one major task is that is constantly draining us. It's just like a sieve. It's just constantly draining our manpower, our mindset, our emotions, our heart. There's something in your life that is extremely draining, and it might be more than one thing. Okay, so those are your first points of attack. You've got to figure out, how can I plug this drain? How can I make this easier for myself? How can I be more intentional to recover, make margin in my day, and understand what it is about this obligation or this thing that is draining so that I can truly have a moment to recoup. You cannot continually pour from an empty cup. We all know that saying. So if there is something that is consistently draining you that you can't get refilled from, you need to figure out a way to manage that thing. In Matthew 11, verse 28, it says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Jesus says this, and it just is highlighting God's gift to us that we get to rest and refresh and recharge in Him. And so if there is something that you're struggling with and you can't figure out a solution for yourself, that is something to be in prayer over. That is something to ask for prayer over. And I've had to do that recently because there's something in my life that I've got to let go of. And it's been very challenging for me. And I've been asking for prayer about it and asking for just confirmation from the Lord on what it is I'm experiencing. And so that I can make the best choice that I can for my situation and steward that well. Because I ultimately know things that are draining like that, they're keeping you from God's calling on your life. Like they're the things that are holding you back. So to be able to set aside time each day, reflect on this, consider this thought of what is draining, what is not allowing me to recharge and refuel, and how can I fix this? We need those solutions. Those need to be priority things that we are focused on this week. So I challenge you to do that. Living the soft life is not about setting or achieving less or living off grid or not having any responsibilities. It's about aligning life with God's purposes and living with intentional actions and intentional peace and grace that you are focused on cultivating. Because ultimately, we all have free will and we all get to choose the things that are part of our life and part of our mind and that we carry in our heart. And we have to take ownership of that. We have to encourage ourselves that in God's eyes, we are called to love Him the most, love Him with our heart and soul, and love our neighbor as ourselves. That is our purpose. That is what He created us to do. So how are we doing that or not doing that? What is holding us back from living in that purpose and living out the things that He has called us uniquely to do and the gifts that He's uniquely given us? And how are we stifling ourselves and stifling what He's given us and forcing ourselves into circumstances that we don't belong in anymore or it's time to let go of? And how can we understand what it is that is causing us to feel so discontent? We need to focus on those things so that we can be in prayer and focus on where God is having us turn and what doors He's allowing us to walk through or shut, and be okay with that and have this understanding that my life doesn't have to look like someone else's. My level of success or my idea of success is not someone else's. I focus on what God is calling me to do. And if I'm waking up every day with the intention to serve Him well first, then my contentment is coming from the rest and knowing that I've spent that day worshiping Him, whether it's been through nurturing my children and taking care of sick babies, or, firing off a business meeting that created just this most amazing opportunity, or serving a person who needs me right now, who needs the comfort and the help that I can offer them, whatever it might be. we have to have our eyes open, our hearts open, our hands open to what God is doing in our life each and every single day. It's dying to ourselves daily and picking up our cross so that we can be a reflection of Him and not our ideals and not the expectations of what society has on us, and not foregoing what you feel passionate about and what you value the most just because you want to fit in. Another perfect example I can think of about this is sports. Like, I love sports. I grew up playing sports. My siblings played sports, watched sports. But I also value having more time with my kids than coaches do, or spending more time as a family than all being in separate directions and all doing separate games all week and all weekend and going to 1,000 different practices to where everyone's bitter and aggravated and tired every single day because they got to manage school and work and practices and all this stuff. Like, it's okay to say no to some stuff. Like, you don't have to do everything because you see all these people doing that. Everyone's circumstance is different, and being able to be intentional and build a hedge around the things that you truly do value and want to experience in your life, you have to take a lot of ownership for that. Sure, things are going to happen to us, obstacles are going to come, things that we don't anticipate are going to be part of our journey, but God has called us to be intentional with those seasons and with everything that we've got. So we draw close to Him in those moments that aren't accounted for and that we didn't expect. But if we're valuing what He has set before us to value the most, then we are content in all things in spite of our circumstances. So you want to be able to set clear boundaries, embrace delegation and let go of perfectionism, and schedule rest and reflection to live this soft life, to live this life that's balanced, that's less chaotic, more intentional, less striving, more thriving, because you get to wade yourself out of the noise. You get to turn the sound machine on and drown out the rest because you know that you are being intentional about who God created you to be in the situation that you're in, drawing close to Him above all the other stuff. Your purpose is not just what you do, but who you are becoming in Christ. In Ephesians 2:10, it reminds us that we are God's masterpiece, created anew in Christ Jesus to do the good works He has planned for us. This means that every step of our journey, our struggles, our growth, and our dreams is woven into His greater plan. And when we seek Him first, our purpose becomes clear. We become grounded in His love and guided by His wisdom and called to walk boldly in that. Like, we feel at peace about it. So many people make different sacrifices. Some people sacrifice both people working because they value one person being the homemaker or being the primary care person for their family. And it requires their life to look a lot different than everyone else's, but they value that more. So their contentment lies there and not in the hustle culture that a lot of people find themselves trapped in, because now they've got all these different bills to pay and all these expectations, but it's not fully fulfilling what God has called them to do. And so when we're grounded and guided by who God created us to be, we are able to know that our purpose is secured, and it's not in the worldly achievements, but in our identity as His beloved child, chosen to bring light and to love the world as He did. So if you are struggling with getting motivated and trying to figure out a way to manage this new way to look at your life, I do have a motivational growth journal/planner. You can check that out in the show notes below, and it helps you just guide yourself to daily intentions, reflect on growth, and track your progress both personally and in your spiritual walk. So if you're looking to build a more balanced, grace-filled life, check out that resource. And also make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Invite listeners to our community, share this episode out to give people just a breath of air to come up and pause and reflect and think about what's going on, where I want to be, what is actually important to me, and give them a moment to just think about that and hopefully make a positive change this very same day. I want to end with a prayer. Lord, thank you for the gift of family, work, and purpose. Guide us to live with grace, balance, and joy. Help us release perfectionism and embrace the peace that you alone offer. May each of us walk in your strength and wisdom and find rest and purpose as we follow you every single day, as we wake up and die to ourselves to pick up our cross and to bear your image, Lord. And this we ask in your precious name, we pray. Amen. I hope you have a blessed day. Bye for now.